Real Talk with Grace Redman features conversations with fierce and fabulous people from Grace's community and circle who inspire others with their stories of overcoming challenges to create amazing. Grace is an entrepreneur and success coach who works with individuals to diminish their negative mental chatter, boost their confidence, achieve their goals, and increase their prosperity mindset. Get ready for a series of anything goes conversations with remarkable men and women that will get you jazzed for life's unlimited possibilities of success, freedom, and fun. Welcome to Real Talk with Grace Redman.
I am Grace Redman here for another episode of Real Talk with you, where I get to have real life, raw conversations with incredible people from my circles and communities who have overcome challenges and created fabulous. Today, my fabulous guest is Laurie James. Laurie is a mother, caregiver, divorcee turned author, and transformative coach. Laurie's book, Sandwiched, a memoir of holding on and letting go, is about her path to self-discovery and freedom during a time when she was raising 14 daughters. Her mother had a heart attack, and her husband's lawyer delivered some shocking news. Now, Laurie coaches women looking to redesign their lives to find purpose, freedom, and joy. When she's not looking out for her dad, talking about the sandwich generation, her book, or coaching, she can be found walking her dog, skiing, sailing, hiking, spending time with friends, or nurturing her free spirit by planning her next adventure. Please help me welcome the fabulous Laurie James.
Hello, Grace. Thank you so much for having me on. And that was such a wonderful, heartfelt introduction. I've got chills right now.
Yeah, no, you're amazing. And I was just telling
Thank
you, like, I got through the entire book, sandwiched. And sister, it was really amazing. And so much of your experiences like really resonated for me. So as I was reading, I'm like, gosh, yes, like I know how she feels. Like I know what it feels like. And something you just mentioned is the sandwich generation. Like I never thought about it like that. Tell us what that means to you, the sandwich generation.
So it's actually a term and people use it. And basically the sandwich generation is when people anywhere from typically 40 to 60, maybe a little bit older, that have either children still in the home or they're supporting adult children in some way. And they're also caring in some capacity for their elderly parents. And that actually covers about 45% of everyone in that demographic.
Yes. And that was myself as well. My kids were definitely, not adults. They were much younger. And I helped transition both my parents. They both had cancer and had the business. So definitely sandwiched. I was able to really relate to it. And so many other, the caregivers, I can relate to that in other instances.
The crazy ass caregivers.
Yeah, you should definitely write a book about the caregivers for sure. And I'm grateful for the caregivers that have been in our lives, because there's a situation, with someone in my life where we need caregivers. It's not easy. Like you think, okay, it's so easy to find a caregiver.
No. Well, and that's that's actually a really funny topic and one maybe that I can start out, because my book actually started out as the Caregiver Chronicles, right? Because I would come home from visiting my parents and dealing with the latest caregiver issue, whether it was, the caregiver that was stealing from me or drinking on the job or emotionally seducing my dad. And I'd come home, I'm like, to my then husband and to my friends, I'm like, you are not going to believe what happened today. And they're like, you need to write this down. I'm like, I don't even have time to barely think. Like, how am I going to write this stuff down?
Right.
So it took me several years to get everything into a place of calm. And that's when I did start writing.
And it's funny because I watched one of your other podcasts and you mentioned like it kind of took 5 years for the book to come to fruition. And I remember my own publisher, because I wanted to rush it. She says, you can't, because there's going to be life experiences that happen that need to be in that book. And boy, she was not fucking kidding.
Yeah.
So which brings me to something, because you said something happened when you finished your first draft of your book. What was
Yeah.
that? Can you share with us?
Yeah, it was actually very powerful, and it was a pivotal point in my life. And what happened was I wrote my first draft. I was still in my marriage, and I might be giving this away, but I was still in my marriage, and I sat there and I said, "This is not my ending." Like
Mm,
that intuition inside of me, my soul, my gut, however you want, God, whatever higher being you refer to. For me, it's my higher self and my intuition. And I was like, this is not my ending. This doesn't feel right. I need to do something, and I need to do something drastic.
mm.
And I needed to make a huge life change. And but doing that gave me the freedom to write my whole story.
And when you say
And
doing that meaning what?
I had to leave my marriage.
To be able to finish the story,
Yeah.
which
Because
that's
I wrote it as like, "Oh, when we found our way in," and I was like, "Nothing about this feels right," right? Like, as a coach, coaching,
yeah,
it's all tapping into
yes.
it's tapping into our knowing, it's tapping into that inner guide or your intuition. It's like, okay. And this was before I even did any coaching, but I've always been a very intuitive person, or I'd like
Mhm.
to think I was. Clearly, I
Sure,
wasn't if I
I'm
was in
sure.
some of these predicaments, but I was in the process of tapping into more of my intuition at the time, or listening to it. Anyway, so yes, and so I did leave my marriage, and that really, which was the scariest thing I've ever done in my whole entire life.
I can't imagine.
And but it's also been the most freeing.
So, being where we are in our lives, I've had a lot of, friends going through divorce, and, I've had my own struggles. Can you talk a little bit about how it was the scariest, but then on the other side, it was the most freeing?
Yeah. Y So I think when something is really, actually, I just wrote an article about this in my newsletter that went out yesterday. So if anybody's out there, they can go on to my website, Laurie E. James, and read it. But at there's a really wonderful author. Where is he? And his name is Stephen. I've got his book right here. The War of Art. It's a
Mm,
really wonderful book, and he talks all about resistance and how
mm.
resistance shows up in different ways. I don't know if you've ever read this book.
No, but I definitely resistance. I like to hear.
And basically, and this is paraphrasing, but basically what happens is the greater the fear, the bigger the call is to our soul's evolution, right?
Mm,
And so the point is, when something is so fearful, that's when we have to walk through that fear. We need to find the strength, the courage to walk through that fear, because that's freedom is on the other side.
yes.
Right. And the other thing he talks about that I wrote about in my newsletter was, so it's so funny we're talking about this, is our biggest fear is the fear that we are going to succeed, whether
Mhm.
it's unconscious or conscious. That's our biggest fear. And then what do we do?
Marianne Williamson talks about that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know,
I think,
how do, what, I can't quite remember her saying.
yeah,
But
let me look it up.
it's,
It's
um,
powerful.
it's, who am I? Who am
Yes,
I to do X? Who am
yes,
I not to?
yes. And it's so powerful because, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It's our light, not our
Yes,
darkness, that makes us most that most frightens us. And it
yes,
goes on.
yes,
So this is so crazy because I was talking about this morning. Does this resonate for you? I think most of us are so accustomed to being in our crisis, to being in our trauma, and
yeah,
that's how we live and survive. Like, who would we be if we were in peace?
yeah. Who would we be? And because when that's all that feels like comfort. That feels like home.
We're addicted. I write this in my book. Like, we are addicted to the drama because that drama um, produces the same endorphins that feel like that happiness does, that
Mhm,
doing
mhm,
something. So
mhm,
it's
and our brain doesn't know the difference.
our brain doesn't know the difference. So I remember for myself when I started my journey and was letting go of the dysfunction and of the drama, there were times that I would be sitting and I thought I was depressed,
Mhm.
but I
Well, you
didn't
might have
feel,
been.
I
I
didn't,
mean, because
and I've
depression
been
is
depressed.
a
Yes,
symptom of that, right?
totally. And I've been depressed before, but this felt different.
Uh,
And then I was like, "Oh gosh, this is peace. I don't know how to sit in peace because I'm so used to the, I'm getting a little warm talking about all this
right.
because I'm so used to the drama." And I was like,
Yeah.
that was a light bulb moment. Is that something that resonates with you? Can you
Oh, completely. I can even remember as a kid thinking, "I want something really bad to happen
Ah,
because then I'll feel, like,
mm,
important or, like, special in some way."
mm,
And then fast forward, this time that I write about in my book, I can remember there were times when, like, maybe it was a week or 2 that nothing was happening, whether, with my husband, my kids, my parents, and I was like, "Okay, I think I'm kinda ready for something to happen," and I'm like, "Laurie, stop it, like, that's a sick thought, like, why are you thinking of
I'm
it?" Because we get addicted to that.
yes, yes, and I'm so glad because I thought I was crazy. Now I love the peace.
Yeah,
I love the I don't, now like I have very little drama, in my life, but it took time for me to
yeah,
adjust. My nervous system was
oh,
so used to it. It's like, where's it at? I want it. But
yeah,
I'm so grateful I got to the other side because like you said, there's so much peace and freedom, on the other side of that.
yeah, and the other thing that I'll just, kind of share also is I did leave my husband, and actually it was 5 years ago this past weekend that I left. So there's a milestone, but I've been dating somebody for the last year,
That's
and it's super
amazing.
healthy, it's super wonderful, but there are times like and it's great. Like, I think he could potentially be my life partner,
Aw.
but which is wonderful, but at the same time there are like everything is so even keeled. It's just like, well, this is a little boring. Like,
I totally.
and I get like I don't say that to him, but I have these thoughts in my head, and my therapist friends and my therapist also says that's normal.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I
Yeah.
know it is, but it's getting comfortable with that.
Yes, getting comfortable with the peace, and
Yeah,
again, that's the freedom, and I've learned that, because as long as we're living and breathing, there's always gonna be something that there's always gonna be a challenge or because as humans, we need to grow and expand,
mhm.
and what I'm learning is, at every layer, there's a different, our core wounds are gonna stay the same, those don't change, but there's a different layer, and then I've learned, like, as I get to the next layer of that core wound, then I experience even a greater freedom on the other side.
Oh yes,
And I
yes,
never thought that's possible. I'm like, "Okay, good, got there, done that." And then, like, boom, I'm like, "Oh, shit."
yeah.
In
And
the
what I
process,
found,
there's the other side.
yeah, and what I've also found is the things that used to trigger me in my marriage, right? So those triggers, even when I was dating, on dating different people to find someone, um, as I was starting to date healthier people and also surround myself with healthier people, those triggers, the things that would trigger me, they might still trigger me, but it was uh, the amount of time to get me out of that spiral was less.
Yes.
And then it was fewer and further in between,
Yes.
right? So that's the healing process that we go through
I could
as
totally relate
well.
to that as well,
Yeah.
and, of course, I still get triggered, but now I kind of witness it instead
Yes.
of I mean, I'm not gonna tell you I always witness it. There's times, like, I get dragged into it because there's another layer.
Yeah, we're human.
Totally, but it's not as intense.
Yes.
It doesn't last as long, and there are some things that would trigger me in the past that I just observe. I'm like, "Okay, like, I get it." And that's in itself is empowering because for me, I feel like I wasted so much energy in those triggers that I wasn't able to enjoy the fullness of life and be present.
No. You're in survival mode.
Well,
It's
yes,
just survival mode, right?
right. That's right. And much I think as I'm not going to say just women, as men and women, when our kids are young and we're going through it and there's so much going on. And I think most of us are in survival mode.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, I just felt like I was always treading water. I mean, that's the analogy that I
Mhm.
use a lot with people because, I mean, even when my kids were little, I had 4 kids under the age of 5.
Yes.
And so there was that, and, and just getting everybody to sleep and sleep through the night and all that. It's like, okay, I can breathe. I'm treading water regularly. And then something would pull me down, right? Or then when I write about in my book, the primary 8 years of, okay, this drama, that drama, it's like, okay, am I treading water today? And then there's a part of you that's like, okay, what do I do with myself? But yeah, it's constantly, and it takes you so much longer to recover
Yes.
that you don't have the capacity, your brain, I mean, it's actually a neurological issue. Your brain doesn't have the capacity to relax its nervous system so that way you can feel safe and secure and enjoy that freedom.
Yeah. I mean, we were, because again, raising the kids, we were in a constant fight or flight response.
Yeah,
We didn't give our time, our body, our nervous system to go into that parasympathetic response to
right.
relax. So we're always going. And something I teach, and I know it's not easy, especially when you have kids and working relationships, whatever it is. If we weren't taught to make that space for self care, not our
Mm-mm,
generation.
mm-mm.
And I really want to emphasize, to the generation coming, behind us, that the self-care is so, and it's not just about getting your hair, because I could get my hair and nail done for
No,
days, but it
nothing
wasn't
to do with that. I mean, yeah,
about this.
yeah,
So, ladies and gentlemen that are watching, start now because the
yeah.
effects can,
It,
linger.
yeah, it's so important, and it's hard. It's hard in our world because our world is getting faster. We get
Yes.
information faster. There's so much stimuli coming at us between TV and social media, and we're getting pulled in so many directions. Just like and then we have FOMO with like, well, I want to be part of that, and I want to be part of that. But one of the things I think COVID at least taught me was it forced me to slow down,
Yes.
and so it's how do I take some of that and continue to fold that into my daily life and not get back on that treadmill again.
Well, I struggle with that because, I was a conditioned overachiever
Mhm.
and doer, but a lot of it, like, I enjoy as well. But I have to remind myself, okay, now you're starting to get back on that wheel. Does it feel good
Yeah,
to you? Are these things you want to do? And if not, I need to scale it back. But like, I want it all. Like, I want I want the social life. I want to go out. I want to work. Like, I want it all. And I'm remembering, well, there are some things that even till this day, I have to say no to.
yeah, yeah.
But I wanna do it all. So, time to get discerning, Grace.
Ex- exactly.
So, something you talk about, is a loneliness you felt so much of your life, and I
Hmm.
relate to that. How did you overcome that loneliness?
Um, two different things really come up for me is I think the first thing with anything is awareness around it, right? It's
Mhm.
developing that awareness. I did not get into therapy until I was in my 40s. So I think therapy really helped me with that awareness. But at the same time, especially during this 8-year period of time in my life, I was grasping for answers. I was grasping to understand why this was all happening to me. So I was on a spiritual journey. So that was one thing that really helped me to understand the spiritual aspect of my life and who I am personally. Therapy was a huge piece of it to understand that the choices that I was making was adding to or reinforcing my personal belief, right? And then as coaching, we talk about a lot about our beliefs, and it's changing my perspective on my belief that because what's also in my book, as you know, is I'm adopted, which added to my loneliness because I didn't feel like I belonged in my family, etc. So it's really understanding that and doing the inner work that you need to do, the self-development work through spirituality, through therapy, through coaching, but it's also then changing your exterior world
Mhm.
that's reinforcing the beliefs that you have,
Yes, I love how you
right?
mm.
So it's a combo, but first and foremost, we have to do the work inside.
Yes, and that's where it starts. It starts with us, and if we don't do the work inside, we're gonna leave one, bad job and go to another job, and we're
Mhm.
gonna see the same, situation. We're gonna leave one, bad relationship, go to another relationship, and be in the same situation. And then what's the common denominator? It's we need to change who we are. And sometimes we don't even see it,
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
it's like so subtle. The denial can be so subtle that you're like, oh, everything like, oh shit, I'm the common denominator here.
Yes.
And we all need to do our own healing. But that's the hardest thing for me to accept, and let me know, how this, if this resonates for you. We got to accept people where they are on their journey. And if they're not
Mhm.
ready, they're not ready. There is nothing we can do. Like we
Mhm.
go along.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, acceptance, and it's so hard, and acceptance and letting go,
yeah.
I think, are the two very, very difficult things that I had to grapple with, through my book. And, and again, you talked about the layers of the onion earlier on. It's like, okay, we peel that layer off, and you're like, okay, there's another layer. There's another. I mean,
Yes.
and it's a journey. It's not a destination, right?
Yes.
We're done when we pass away, or if you believe that your soul, lives on, then I don't think we're ever done.
Right. I mean, I believe we're a spirit having a
Yeah.
human experience in
Yes.
this body, and we get to choose. And sometimes like, did I really fucking choose this?
Right.
No.
Or as Oprah says, God, don't teach me anything today.
Right? Oh gosh. I'm like, can I just integrate and be? Like, can I just do nothing and be? Um,
Exactly.
but again, when we're so because I'm so deep and intuitive, it's like it's hard for me to just, you know,
Not.
yeah, not like I see everything like, oh, okay, I have an awareness, around that. Um, that's why it's so important to have fun,
Yeah,
and you talk about,
absolutely.
adventures. And
Oh,
I
yeah.
love, like, how you in the book you talk about taking different trips to different places, and
Mhm.
when you're on those trips, although there's other things looming, you talk about like how you're in your joy and how you, felt good. And I think that those distractions are so important because those help us. I know for me, those, maybe they're not even distractions, those times of flow really bring clarity to what I may have to do next, or
Yeah,
what could be my next step.
right. Absolutely. And there's two things I'll say about that. The first is that's a time that we need to give to ourselves. That's part of our self-care, right? I mean, if you can't go on this really fabulous trip, that's fine. Go to the beach, go for a
Yes.
hike, right? But getting yourself away and giving yourself that self-care to nurture whatever your soul needs. Like, I've got one client that loves to dance. I'm a nature person. Like, what feeds your soul
Mhm.
and refills you up, refuels and rejuvenates you. So that's important for those who are listening, because it's going to be different for everybody. They do, but the other piece is there is more and more research around how nature is very calming for the nervous system. And even some doctors in the US and Canada are actually prescribing national park passes for people to encourage them to get out in nature because it is very calming. We're not used to having the lights and the computers and the da, 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 and the constant
Yeah.
stimulation. We need to learn to calm our nervous system down.
Yes, and it's funny that you say that some doctors are prescribing. I recently, had a health situation that I went through, and I'll share about that more later. However, I worked with both my primary care physician, or the Western medicine doctor, and
Mhm.
my naturopath.
Mhm.
And when I went to the naturopath, he was like, "Do you get out in nature?" And I said, "Yes." He goes, "Well, how often?" I said, "At least once or twice a week." And he's like, "You need to get out there more often." He said, "Go do a tree bath or a forest bath." I never looked it
Mm.
up because I still went out, but he did prescribe that as part
Yeah.
of my, regimen.
Yeah.
I
Did it
believe
help?
yes,
Yeah.
yes. It really me being by water is very healing for me, like,
Mhm.
being I go out by the bay.
Yeah.
So we do. Our body is not made to constantly be in that fight or flight. We need to rest.
Yes.
And that, like you said, the devices and being out in nature also connects us to that higher spirit, higher power, God, universe, whatever,
Mhm.
you choose to call it.
Yeah.
That's when we connect to ourselves, and for me, that's when the loneliness started to fade.
Interesting. Yeah.
When I
Yeah.
started to connect again, it was through the healing,
Right.
of course, but then when I started
Right.
to connect with, something greater than me.
Yeah. No, I would agree with that. And the other piece that I'll throw in there about the loneliness is when I was so afraid when I left my marriage that I was going to feel more alone, and the complete opposite happened
Interesting.
because I was in a very lonely marriage, and so when I left, I felt less alone than I think I had my entire life.
I think Robin Williams talks about that, or talked about that. I don't have the quote, and I won't go look it up. But he said, "I think the saddest thing is being alone when you have so many people around you."
Yeah.
Something, you talked about earlier, and you also mentioned, you said, you listened to your soul, and you left the marriage, or you would have withered away and died. Your soul would have withered away and died. Can you speak a little bit on that?
Yeah, I'm getting chills as we talk about it. It was around the time when I finished my book, my first draft that we talked about earlier.
Mhm.
But eh, it was my youngest were leaving for college, and we were planning a couple of trips, my ex-husband and I just remember I just thought about, okay, if I commit to this trip that we're planning, it was for his 60th birthday at the time. That means I need to stay in this relationship for another X amount of months, whatever it was. And I just got this like visceral feeling in my core and my solar plex, and I just thought, oh my God, like I can't keep doing this. And it was the same feeling I had the Christmas, because this was around the fall. It was about this time of the year. And we were planning for something in February. So, and I had had that same feeling around the holidays because if I was going to leave my relationship, I wasn't going to do it around the holidays to associate, a divorce with Christmas for my kids.
Totally.
But and so between that and my youngest had just gone away to college, and I sat there and I said, okay, so if I stay in this relationship, this is the way I'm going to feel for the next 25 or X amount of years. And I thought, my soul is going to wither away and die if I stay in this relationship. I will have to, I was already small. I had to be small in my marriage.
Hmm.
So I was going to have to shrink even more and more and more to
I
be able to
feel
stay
that.
in the marriage. And I just like, I can't do that. I am a person, I'm outgoing. There's so much life to live. I mean, there's so much horrible things that are going on in the world that we won't talk about, but there's also a lot of beauty in the world too.
Yes. Yes.
So how do we tap into that? And that's what I want to experience. I feel like that's one of the things my soul's here to experience
Yes.
and
Me
to
too.
also make a difference in other people's lives.
For sure. And I feel like, again, this is the second act of our lives. And how do we want to live it, small, which I want to go back to that and ask you about that, you know, small, or like just go out there and
Yeah.
explore.
And expand yourself.
Yes.
Expand and like open yourself up and feel what it feels like to be out in nature. Feel what it feels like to have this wonderful, deep conversation with each other, right? Feel what life really is. I don't want to sit back and just observe what
Right.
life is. I want to experience and feel what
Yes.
life is about.
And it goes back to, like, we are a spirit that came into this body to experience. And there's a saying in Arabic, um, and basically to translate it, we're basically living dead. Not we, but just
Mhm.
you could
Yeah,
live without even living. And I don't want to live like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
I want to have fun. I want to enjoy. I want to feel, that freedom. But I
yeah.
want to go back. And you said you felt small and that you had to be small. What do you mean?
Um, so my ex-husband was a narcissist in some ways, and I understand where it stems from. It stemmed from some, a very difficult childhood that I write about a little bit in the book, but he had a very difficult childhood. So we all develop coping mechanisms, right, to live. And so when you take those coping mechanisms into your adult life, um, it's so that way we can feel safe, right?
Yes.
Because that was the only way we could feel safe as a child.
Hmm.
So one of his coping mechanisms was, I need a lot of control and I need to be right, because he wasn't able really to have any control in his life growing up, and he was always wrong and he was never good enough.
Hmm.
And so there was no room for discussion or negotiation. It was basically his way. We were doing things his way. Or I could put up a fight, but it would take so much effort and so much energy for me to get my way. I had to really decide, is this worth it?
Yeah.
Is
It's
this worth
exhausting.
it? Because it is exhausting.
Mhm.
And so I acquiesced for probably the first 18 years of our relationship. But then again, I think my soul on some level was like, okay, Laurie, you gonna live like this? Like, how long are you gonna do this? I
Right.
was not able to be myself in my relationship, which added to the loneliness. And I'm not like, I call myself an introverted extrovert. Like, I need a certain amount of time to myself
Mhm.
so I can be social. But I do value connection. And
Mhm.
as humans, I think we all want to connect, but I think
Absolutely.
sometimes our experiences don't allow us to connect the
Yes.
way we want to. But as humans, we need to connect,
Absolutely.
whether
It's
it's right, the intimate relationship, the social relationships, the um, exterior relationships. There's just this wonderful book by Vivek Murthy, who's the current Surgeon General, and he was a Surgeon General for Obama. And I read his book called Together, and it's just a wonderful book that really kind of explains the importance of relationships, and when some of that those pieces are missing in the relationship, that can cause loneliness.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could relate to that. And I understand that we fall in love, or, we connect on that piece. But then what I've learned is our trauma responses really attract us to each other. So then you have, so then we have, and each person has to do their own work, and you have to meet them where they are. But I was reading Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now when it comes to
Love
relationships,
it.
especially romantic relationship. He goes, they are the most dysfunctional and messed up because they trigger all of our stuff, and we're both responding from, like you said, our childhood. And so that, for me, I was like, well, that helps me. But sometimes, again, like, there's decisions you have to make for yourself.
Mhm.
and you got
Yeah.
to let go and move on. And it takes courage. So I commend you on taking that courageous step, because you guys were married for like almost what, 27 years?
26 years together, 28. So yeah. And it's hard because, the other piece of it, there's two pieces of it. One is, and I write about this in my book, I thought I was creating this life and this family that I didn't have as a child, because I thought it was going to keep me safe, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one piece of it, and nothing could be further from the truth, because there wasn't a lot of emotional safety. There was a lot of, I had financial safety, I had physical safety, but there wasn't a lot of emotional safety in there to really be able to feel comfortable to talk about feelings and emotions and how that might have hurt me or whatever. And it goes back to what, the Eckhart Tolle, that intimate relationship. But the other thing is, when I made that decision, I wasn't just making that decision. That decision didn't just affect me. It affected my family, right? It affected my 4 daughters. And my 4 daughters are like, they're the most important thing in my life. And so, that's one, those are the 2 reasons why I spent so much 5.5 years therapy trying to work it out. Right. And,
Well, it's not
for those
easy.
2 reasons.
Yeah, I mean, it's not an easy, that's not an easy decision to make, like you said, because it's connected to so many other individuals and it
Yeah.
affects so much. And everyone has to do it at their own pace as well.
Yeah.
Something that I wanted to touch on was when you were going through all of your experiences, and your incredible daughters, amazing girls, you talk about them,
Yeah.
and kind of being sandwiched in that, and being in the marriage. What did you start doing for yourself to help yourself stay sane?
Drink wine with girlfriends?
Martini.
Drink wine with girlfriends responsibly.
Responsibly, in moderation. Yes.
Responsibly, not
Yes.
get drunk, but drink.
Mhm.
So a couple of different things. Definitely developing that female tribe was very important,
Mhm.
because I don't have supportive family. And so that became my family. So I really started at the beginning of the book, started surrounding myself with friends that had
Mhm.
my back, who I could cry on their shoulders. I would do the same for them. And I felt very safe for them. So it's developing those friendships. Um, for me, yoga is something that has been a savior in my life. Meditation. So yoga led me to meditation too. But yoga was one of the um, exercises that I was able to do that would calm my central nervous system, or my autonomic
Mhm.
nervous system, down enough where it was longer lasting. Like, meditation will do it for me, but it was temporary. Like, it would only last maybe an hour or 2, where if I went to yoga 2 or 3 times a week, like, that would carry me for 2, or one yoga class would carry me for at least 2 days.
Mm.
And that was huge.
Yeah.
And then therapy, just, you know, and nature,
Mhm. All of it.
all of those
I do all
things,
of those things.
right? And so, but again, everybody is different. So
Yes.
it's really coming back to yourself and trying to understand, what is it that I need, and
Yes.
what rejuvenates me, what refuels me. Sometimes it's reading a book.
Right. And
Sometimes
there's
it's edging in front of the TV.
Mhm. And there's, like you said, there's so many different things you can do, but I agree with what you said. For me, it is meditation. I love Bikram yoga, and I got to get
Mhm.
there more often since the pandemic.
Yeah,
But I
it's
do other
really messed things up.
but I do other types of, yogas. I love being in the heart room. That helps
Mhm.
me so much. Journaling. So again, like you said, making time for those things definitely
Yeah.
help. And now they're just habit. Even if I'm not going through like, those are just my
Mhm. They
those
become part of your routine.
those are my part of my routine. Those are my habits, and I live by them. I'll tell
Yeah.
you. And I
Same.
live by the principles that you talk about, like the surrender, the acceptance, the allowing. And of course, you go deeper in the practice,
Mhm.
as we continue to move forward in this, adventure we call life, as we age and we'll get wiser and
Yes.
we'll dig deeper into those processes because it's not always black or white, you know.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that I'll touch on is also writing. Like I was never a big journal gal. I still am not a big journal gal, but when I write, whether I sit down to write my newsletter or when I was writing my book and as I'm deciding whether I have another book in me or not,
Yeah.
it that's very meditative too, because it really helps you make sense of what's happening in your life. Like,
Agree.
and examining what was going on. Why did I react the way I did? Why, or not react? And so it really helps you go a little bit deeper and really understand your choices and how your choices affect, your outcome, and that
Yes.
we do have choices.
We do, and I didn't think, growing up, I didn't think I had choices, but now,
Yeah.
as a coach like yourself, we always have a coach. We always have a choice, even
Yeah.
if the choice in that moment is to do nothing. Which brings me to the question: what inspired you to become a coach?
So when my twins were in college, high school, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do, right? Because I'm not a person that can just, and if I stayed in my marriage, I wasn't going to have to work, which was, again, financial security was nice, but do I start a nonprofit? So I really started exploring. And when I first started working with a coach myself, I figured out what my values were, right? And what my strengths were. And one of those values and strengths is making a difference, right? So making a difference. So whether it's raising my children, I wanted to be the primary parent in their life. I didn't want to have somebody else raise them. And it doesn't go against anybody that chooses to work or has to work. It was just a choice that I made. And um, um, so so I was looking at what to do, and I used to be a recruiter in my past life before I stayed home. And I
That's what
think you were
I
too, right?
was.
Yeah, yeah. So I've always been a people person and I've always enjoyed helping other people. So it just came naturally. So I kind of played with like being a parenting coach and then maybe a divorce coach. And then I'm like, no, let me spread it a little bit bigger. And so the day I turned my manuscript in is the day I started my coaching program.
I love that.
Off the back, yeah, and, it just felt right. It felt right, and it was beautiful because I really wanted a program that was ICF certified, and she had just become ICF certified program. So I was like, "Okay, done." I love her. I love, what she stands for, and she's, just been an amazing mentor in my life and, through her books, and so it was just a no-brainer for me.
Well, that's the universe working on our behalf and the
Yes.
synchronicities and bringing the information to us, like, when
Mhm,
we're ready, and
mhm.
I totally believe in all of that.
Yeah.
So now I want you to tell us about your new course.
Oh, yes, thank you. So I am starting a course middle of October. So I think it's the 19th, and it's all about dating in midlife and how to date differently in midlife. I've got a little flyer here that I've
Perfect, perfect.
and and the topics that we're going to cover is our beliefs around dating, attachment styles. We're going to dip into that a little bit and how they play into dating, values and non-negotiables, like what are your values, what are your non-negotiables for dating yourself, what I call the 4 C's: chemistry, connection, compatibility, and conflict repair. manifesting your ideal partner, and then you get one-on-one coaching session. So if there's anybody out there, please DM me, or you can go to my website, lauriejames.com, and click under course, and you can apply or even just send me a note for more information. But I'm super excited about this because these are all the things that I did to find the person that I'm with. And so I know they're proven and they work.
I love it. For everyone that's watching, we will have Laurie's information below. We might even be able to do the course link, but we'll definitely link them to your website if they're interested. And once we upload to Apple, iTunes, Spotify, all of your information, and YouTube, all of your information will definitely be there. And in the meantime, if anyone has questions, you can definitely put them in the chat. Laurie and I will definitely come back to that. What is one last nugget of wisdom that you'd like to leave our audience with?
One last nugget, letting go, surrendering is what comes up to me. I know we've touched on that a little bit, but I don't think we went real deep into it. And again, there's layers and layers of that as well. But it's, when we surrender and we let go, I mean, that's what I write about. I had to let go of the life I planned in order to find the life I belong to. And it's so true. If you can step through that fear and let go of something that you're so afraid of letting go of or afraid to achieve, when you do that, amazing things can happen. And your life, the amount of suffering changes. I mean, just the joy and the happiness and the freedom, just you open space for it to flood in.
That is a beautiful, beautiful nugget of wisdom that I'm just going to let it be there and just sit in the energy of that for a moment, because you're right. It is in the letting go that we create space for more and better.
Yeah.
Love it. Time flies. I can stay here with you the rest of the day because there's so much we didn't cover. I'd love to have you back again and join me in the new year.
That. And I want to hear more about your book that's coming out too. I can't wait.
Thank you. I'll be sharing more about that definitely very soon. But it was such a pleasure and honor to have you on today. Sandwich is really a great memoir. Go ahead. You can find it on Amazon. That's where I picked it up on. And it's real and raw. And I appreciate your vulnerability with that.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me. Hold on with me. And for those of you that are watching, as always, I'm really grateful. And I appreciate you because I know there are thousands of different places you can be. And I'm thankful that you're here with us live or on the replay. And as always, I wish you the best and continue to create a life you love, because you're always creating. So if you're always creating, why not create something you love? All right.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Have an incredible rest of the day. And
thank you, Grace. Thank you so much for having me and reading my book. I loved our conversation. We'll definitely stay in touch on this journey.
Yeah. Stay with me for just 1 second, Laurie. Bye, all. Hey, love. Thank you so much for listening today. I am so grateful for you. I'd like to show you my appreciation by gifting you a free forgiveness self-hypnosis audio download. Part of living the fun and fabulous life is practicing forgiveness. Forgiveness can be such a long and challenging process. My intention is that this forgiveness audio will help you in practicing forgiveness, especially with yourself. Grab it by visiting daretoachieve.com/forgiveness. For more inspiring tips, make sure to connect with me on social media. Drop me a line on Facebook or Instagram at Grace Redman Dare to Achieve. Until next time, keep moving forward towards living your fabulous life.